Hi, welcome everyone here to the second season of Linguabees the Podcast. First, we want to talk about a little bit and we want to acknowledge some changes that we have for the second season. We want to thank our fellow classmates who started this journey with us and were the basis of this podcast. Without their helps, we wouldn't be here right now. So thank you very much. And at the same time, we want to welcome the new members of this project who you will meet actually in the next episode. So in our first season, we had the chance to introduce you ourselves as part of the Linguabees team, but you didn't know anything about what we are researching or doing right now. So today's episode, it's a roundtable where we share the most shocking, the most difficult, the most happy things about doing research right now and within our thesis projects, right? So I want to introduce to the members of the project.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Patricia, and my thesis project is about cyberbullying and ELT.
Hello, everyone. I am Alondra Juarez Hernandez, and my thesis project is about experiences of EFL students, specifically critical incidents of EFL students during their process learning English throughout primary school to university.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dulce, and my thesis is about the effect of teaching collocations on lexical complexity in academic writing.
Myself, I switched topic a little bit, and now I am talking about the non-binary identity, the experiences, of course, within EFL class. So right now, we will start with positive and negative challenges, but the first one, it's the difficult one, right? So I want you to ask you, girls, what was the most difficult aspect of conducting your study? It could be everywhere, right? It could be a methodological aspect, a knowledge aspect, because I know that you have faced some challenges, but what has been, Patty, what has been the most difficult aspect of conducting your study?
Well, actually, for me, it was pretty challenging to conduct this research because, well, this is my first research project I'm working on, actually. In my BA, I didn't have to do a thesis. I graduate with high honors, so, I begin from zero. Well, the first challenge was the design of the research techniques because, as a novice researcher, I was pretty insecure about the techniques I was developing because, in my topic, it's a understudied topic, so there's no other instruments I could take on to work on this project, so I have to do everything from zero. And I was pretty insecure about that. The other main challenge were to gather participants because, cyberbullying is a very sensitive topic. And of course, many people don't want to share about their experiences in this, about this phenomenon. And let me see. And the other challenges, were after conducting the research, like the writing, because I don't have no experience in academic writing. So for me, still is pretty difficult to write in this style. I consider those were my main challenges, but I'm pretty satisfied at this point with what I have done.
And it is really interesting because that will be the next question. You will tell me about your most rewarding moments, the most satisfying aspects of doing research, because I notice it is not entirely negative, okay? But yeah, once now taking back to the conversation, once you conduct a sensitive study with a sensitive topic, it things get a little bit difficult, and I do understand what you're saying. What about you, Alo? What has been the most difficult aspect of conducting your study? And I know that by their name, by its own name, it is somehow difficult.
Yes, well, I think that I relate to some of my classmates' responses because, as Patty mentioned, we have had like different difficulties in the beginning, then after in the second semester, and now that we are in the third semester, we have like different challenges. And for me, well, at the beginning of the program, where when we had to like plan and design everything and basically like do the research proposal and everything, I was pretty insecure, as Patty mentioned, about like what approach to take, what method, also like what strategies to use, what instruments, and plan and design the instruments for the data collection process. I think it was like a difficult process. And then when I had like my idea established and I was like really excited to be asking and inviting participants to my study, well, the next difficulty arose, that was the data collection process. For me, I was planning to do a case study where I had to ask or invite participants of a specific institution. And I did. I went to the institution, I presented my research proposal to the principal, and he had a positive attitude and a positive response. But when I shared my questionnaire with the students, I did not receive many responses. So I had to take another plan. At the beginning, it was really frustrating because, like we had um, a time limit to like do the data collection process and gather the information, and I was like, I'm not going to make it on time. So I had to work through my network to ask and invite some participants. And when I finally had my 7 participants, well, it was also difficult to conduct the interviews because for most of my participants, I was a stranger. I did not know them, they did not know me. So it was like a very difficult and sometimes awkward situation to be in the interviews. I had some interviews through like cell phone calls, through video calls, and also like face to face with some of my participants who I knew. And well, after that time or the data collection process, now that we are like gathering everything and connecting everything, it has been difficult also the written part because it's like you have an idea in your mind and then you have to like make it written, which has been pretty difficult to do.
I know, and it is really, really interesting how once you have everything, how to construct the idea, now that you gather the information, now that you have your participants' respondents, now that you already structure your techniques and your instruments, but how do I put it into paper? That is really, really difficult. And I do believe on that. But yeah, some of us, some of you have another perspective because they are doing something different. As Dulce, what about you?
Well, I think I am in a pretty similar situation as Patty, that I feel like I'm starting from zero because even though I have already carried out a research in the BA, this was a qualitative paradigm. So now in the master's, I am implemented a quantitative approach. So it has been very difficult for me to adapt to this new paradigm because I have to change everything. Like I had to learn about the language I had to use, like also the methodology. It was very different from what I was used to do. So, for example, defining the variables was pretty complex because I had to make sure that I was really connecting the the techniques with the results. So it was a very challenging process. And also like to analyze data because it was a lot of data to analyze. So it was 140 samples. So it took a lot of time and it was pretty difficult, pretty complex to identify the patterns and everything. So I think that those were like the most difficult part for yes aspects for me, and also identifying previous literature related to my study because there were no many studies related to what I am doing. So it was very complex also to find this background and to compare and contrast and also to like to define the techniques I was going to implement because as you know I adopted some teaching techniques in order to have the results, but it was very complex because there is not an agreement about how to teach, like what is the better methodology or techniques to teach these expressions. So I had to look for different papers related to the same, to similar aspects, but it was very complex because there is not an agreement and they adapt different strategies to teach.
I know it is really complex once you have an idea of something and you have to create or maybe understand another element within the same methodology of the research. As in my case, I would say that I'm going through the same journey as yours. I haven't had the chance to structure and develop a qualitative thesis, and I did just a quantitative thesis in my VA. So I thought that it will be similar. Obviously, there are similarities among them, but it's a complex process to understand. To portray someone's experience within research tends to be sensitive, but at the same time, it's a delicate situation in which you have to make sure that you are using the proper strategies, technique, and instruments to not to avoid any part of the message you are using or you are using through language, right? And another thing that I would say, it was really complex, but at the same time, it was really shocking, was to gather participants because, as you might know, I'm working with the non-binary gender identity. So gather participants in, I don't want to say that it's a really conservative scenario, but I would say that as it is a university city, when we are doing the MA, I thought that it would be better and I thought it would be easier to look for participants because the big majority of the population are students. So I thought, okay, that would be easier, but it was not. It was not even close to easy. And participants didn't have like a good response. They didn't want it to like show their faces while the interview was performed, sorry. So now I know how some social aspects could have an impact on someone's identity. And it was shocking, but at the same time, it is interesting as a way to continue research, to further researchers to understand how's the context of the population you are into and how to gain access to those specific populations would be better if you understand how does it work. But I want to highlight also on the positive elements because not everything has been that bad, right? So, what has been the most rewarding, happy things about conducting your research? I mean, specifically within your topic, what has been the most rewarding things? Let's say, Alo, what has been the most rewarding things of your research? The most meaningful ones?
Well, I think it's good that you are taking this perspective because, well, like everything has been about problems and our problems, and even within our talks in the hallway when we are off class, has been about like problems and difficulties that we have had. And well, now that you make me think about it, I think there has been some positive things and rewarding things about conducting this research. Well, as I mentioned, my research is about looking or identifying, analyzing critical incidents of university students that they have had throughout their experience as EFL students in Mexico. And well, I think that when I was conducting the interviews, I realized that I was kind of really connecting with my participant stories because some of the experiences they shared, some of the difficulties, struggles, but also like positive things that they found in their experience were making me remember how difficult and also like how challenging was the process of learning English for me. Well, my study connects with this reality that we have in Mexico when we are learning a language that is not so easy to practice outside the classroom. Because we don't have like many opportunities in some contexts to have to encounter English in our daily lives. And some of my participants were sharing how they find ways to use English outside the classroom through social media, video games, their hobbies and interests, such as reading, watching movies, series. And it was really interesting for me to be able to understand their experiences and connected with my own experience as a language learner, but also have the or offer them the space to talk about their experience because some of them were saying that they really struggled with, for example, some aspects of English and that they also had like some experiences and they wanted to thank, for example, their EFL teachers that sometimes were like this light for for their stories to not give up on learning English. So I think that it was really rewarding to offer them a space for expressing their stories, themselves, and for sharing these experiences of success, but also like these struggles that they have to acknowledge how difficult it is to learn English. That we sometimes think that it's like another subject, but they like had this space to share their experience and making me understand that it is worth knowing or letting them express their story as language learners.
And that is really meaningful how through those experiences we are able to understand how has been the process, how the process of everyone, it's a unique perspective or something in this case within EFL. And yeah, I'm glad to hear that we are opening this conversation about how also students could share their besides their knowledge, their emotions through the language. That it is pretty meaningful. What about you, Patty? What about your experiences?
Well, the most rewarding thing about my research was in the stage of collating data, because when I was conducting my semi-structured interviews, most of my participants told me that talking about cyberbullying and their experiences was like a kind of therapy. So, well, I honestly I was kind of satisfied to hearing that. Be like, oh yes, at least I'm hearing them and they are feeling better about what they live, etc. And well, and the other one is always when I'm presenting in a seminar, I don't know, for some reason, my topic is kind of engaging, because, yeah, everyone wants to talk, everyone's has something to say, everyone wants to participate, to questions, all of that is, it's never happened to me that um, to hear silence or something after I presenting. And well, actually, I have a theory about what that happens, and I believe it's because everyone in some point of our lives have experienced cyberbullying, in Facebook, in Instagram, WhatsApp, wherever. I think that's the reason why the topic is so engaging, uh, or polemic, or all of that. And yeah, I must say that those are the most rewarding things of my research. And well, of course, when I see in retrospective what I have done, I feel satisfied.
And I really like to hear that we are satisfied with what we are doing, because that's the point, right? That's the point here, to express how how we feel right now. And yeah, as you might know, I work also with sensitive topics, and it is, as you do, it is rewarding to let people talk about their experience and how their process of, in this case, living cyberbullying has impacted, I would, every one of us. And that is why it is our topic tends to be so engaging, because somehow we represent this part of the population that, in this case, suffered cyberbullying disgracefully. And yeah, that's, you have all reason with this. And Dulce, what about your case? Because it is pretty unique.
Yes, I think I have a lot of things to mention about this. So, first of all, I think I have learned a lot in the process. I mean, I had already received a statistic class, but I think that I learned much more in the process about how to analyze data, about these variables, about different procedures, also to interpret data. So I think that I have learned a lot. And another satisfaction I had is the results per se, because as you know, I aimed to test two hypotheses. So the results I obtained were very positive. So obviously there were different, I mean, there were variations in the results, but overall the results were positive. And I think that that accounts for the teaching techniques that I implemented, and also the the procedures, the methodology, and all of that. So I think that that was one of the greatest satisfaction I had, and also to relate these results to the theory, because it is good to have like this evidence supported also with theory, and to maybe take a position of a different angle about that results, and to give different interpretations and contribute with something in the area, as we all are doing. because we are contributing with something. So, for example, in my case, I am showing evidence that there is a strong relationship between teaching these expressions and also with the development of lexis. So I think that those were like the most greatest satisfaction I had.
And it is, Dulce, when you are able to like connect the theory that we have learned, but we have somehow used, and you connected what you are doing in your research, and you see that you have an impact, and then the results match what with your hypothesis, and it is a satisfaction. It is. And also to be able to portray this into the class, which is what we are, one of the objectives, as I understood. Yeah. I wanted to share also that in my case, I had one of the most rewarding experiences was to somehow to give this specific part of the queer acronym, which is the LGBTQAA plus process. I wanted to give the representation to the non-binary people because I know that there's a lot of information about the gay community, the lesbian community, and we haven't had enough of that information for sure, but I wanted to portray this other experiences of the others, of the non-binary population, because so far I received from my participants 7 of them are non-binary people, which I think it is really important to see how identity has been shaping throughout the years, throughout this process, and to have the chance to analyze another's perspective throughout the research has been really rewarding to see, and to let participants share their voices with my research. It has been really rewarding also to analyze other identities here in Mexico, to see how different cultures throughout hundreds of years have had this non-binary image, and we are somehow underrepresenting them here in Mexico. So also I wanted to show how culture it still have an impact on our lives. And yeah, that has been really rewarding. Thank you for everyone sharing your experiences as MA students and researchers. And thank you all for listening. Stay tuned because for the next episode, we will introduce the new phases of the Linguabees team, because applied linguistics is for everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
This podcast is part of the Applied Linguistics Master's Program at the University of Guanajuato in Mexico. This episode was produced by Alejandro Aguilar, Alondra Juarez, Dulce de Anda, and Patricia Linares. Alejandro Aguilar was the host. This episode was edited by Alondra Juarez Hernandez, and the social media managers are Dulce Anayeli de Anda Vargas and Patricia Linares Flores.